So we can just chit chat a little bit.
Awesome.
So in my previous life, Jen, I was in product marketing. So a lot of those email sequences, I wrote them for the team and I'm like, you guys just write really bad copy, typos everywhere. Da, 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 da. But the moment I know about Lavender, I'm like, no way, I'm gonna put my copies in. Like, I already have imposter syndrome. I don't want any more of that.
Yes, I feel you. I feel you.
Yeah, I see like people trickling in.
Yeah, welcome everybody.
Woo. Welcome.
I think like for folks already in, maybe say hi in the chat and kind of introduce where you're from and see where people are dialing in.
Oh, Jeff Hendricks, what's up, my dude? I used to work with Jeff. Amber, the question.
I'm in charge of the icebreakers.
It's too good.
So I'm thinking tiny elephant myself.
You got to say why.
I'm
Oh,
thinking
chat is disabled.
oh, is it?
It looks like Jeff just messaged in the Q&A and said it's off.
No.
Up in our chat, it is live. At least I'm seeing Amber's. It's not panelists.
Yes, it's just hosts and panelists can only chat, I think.
Mhm.
All right. My worst nightmare. Oh, I can see it. Sorry, guys. Can you guys try to chat, put into the chat to see if, yep, there we go.
Ah, there we go.
I got 90. It's like getting 99 from Lavender. Okay. My week is complete.
All right. Hey, everybody. Yeah, so I'm going elephant for sure. If no one saw the question in the chat, it's would you rather be a giant hamster or a tiny elephant? Never got a 99 from Lavender.
Working. I'm going tiny elephant, by the way, because we recently acquired a ferret as yet another pet in our household. And I've never had a hamster, but if hamsters smell anything remotely like ferrets, a giant, stinky hamster would be like nightmare fuel for me. So I'm going tiny elephant.
That was exactly my logic too, was I've been around hamsters as a kid and I was like, smell. I'm like, I've been around elephants in the zoo. I feel like if they were tiny, it wouldn't be that bad.
It's so cute. They're already so cute when baby elephants are the cutest things ever.
Right?
Elephant, because you're still an elephant. That's what's up. Brain. I'm assuming it's Brian, but we can call you Brain.
We got a giant hamster, Desiree. I want an explanation. Elephants don't forget. All right. Trinity's saying we should get started. Let's get started. So thanks, everyone. Welcome. Thanks for joining us. Quick intros from Jen and I. I'm the Director of Account Development at UserGems, a former SDR myself, so really near and dear topic to me, both as a manager and as a rep. And then just to talk a little like more personally, something I like to do outside of work. So I love eating, love food, and I've created a pretty long list of strip mall restaurants to check out in the area, in the Miami area, which is where I'm at. About anything within an hour radius is fair game. So each weekend going and hitting up a new restaurant with my husband and my kids. Jen, you want to chime in?
Yeah. So someone already called it out. I'm now Jen Allen Knuth. Got a new last name as of last week, doing the hyphenated run. I lead community and partnerships over at Lavender. And what I love to do outside of work is just cuddle my dogs. I could cuddle my dogs 24 hours a day. In fact, that's why I work. So that at some point in my life, I can retire and just cuddle dogs as my full-time job. But for now, it's Lavender and cuddling the dogs.
Love it. Love it. So really excited to be here with Jen. We're going to be talking about how you can reach out to your champions when they've changed jobs, moved to a new company. It's become a really popular play here recently. So we're just going to dive in to best practices, how you can stand out from the crowd as it has become more popular, and continue to book some meetings. So Jen, I was hoping you might start us off just talking about what are some of the big trends that we're expecting this year as far as email prospecting.
Yeah. So obviously, Lavender, for those of you that don't know us, we are an email coach that uses AI to help you avoid making icky mistakes in your sales emails, which we're all guilty of. So when I started in January, I've been learning a ton about the space of email and prospecting, and it's fascinating, right? I think you cannot open your LinkedIn feed, you can't open your web browser without seeing some company talking about AI right now. So I think the big narrative that we've been hearing a lot about is just with Chat GPT coming out, or whatever format of it is, there's a lot of conversation around, is this going to completely change the game of outreach, right? And some of it is healthy conversation. Some of it is a little concerning to me as someone who spent my entire career in sales, because I think the way it's being perceived in many cases is kind of an easy button, right? I'll just throw in some prompts and then I'll just have it blast out more emails, more emails, more emails with less work. So one of the things I was really surprised by is if you look at the average email reply rate for sales emails, on average, it's hovering somewhere between like 2 and 5%, which is abysmal and embarrassing. And I can't believe that we as a profession kind of accept it, right? But even in spite of that, there's still a lot of companies who say, hey, instead of making the emails better, let's pursue a strategy of more. Like, let's just turn up the volume to account for the low reply rate. So sequences get loaded up, cadences get loaded up, and we're just blasting our prospects in the hope that it lands in the right inbox at the right time, which obviously hope's not the most phenomenal strategy in sales. So as we look at Chat GPT, as we look at an abysmal reply rate, there's a big conversation and question going on around, what is the role of personalization? How should we be approaching emails? Should it be about personal personalization? Should it be about relevance? And so I think what's been really fascinating is if you look at the data, and we're going to go into this more later, personalization in the sense of being relevant, in the sense of being unique. I, as a reader, know that this email was written for me, doubles your reply rate. Right. So that is in the right direction, I would say. But we've got to think responsibly around how do we do it in a way that doesn't eliminate the skill of the seller? Because if I don't have to go through that process of learning, looking at the account, identifying what's important to them, I would argue we're actually cutting the legs off of a seller from being able to think through preparing for that meeting and showing up with a really strong point of view. So lots of really interesting things that we're seeing in terms of trends. I think we're going to see this move really, really fast this year as more and more companies put their kind of finger in the Chat GPT button. But Sarah, I know you were going to talk about sort of the state of job changes. So tell us what's going on with that.
Yeah, so I think everyone's pretty well aware it's been a big year already for job changes. We generally see about 20% of people changing jobs every year. This year, we're expecting to see a lot more than that, trending that way. So for most companies, even at 20%, that's already a pretty substantial chunk of their customers, their users. So meaning a lot of contacts for SDRs to be approaching when those changes are happening. So trigger in general, the job change trigger, has been kind of a favorite among, the poll popped up, among top performers for a while, but now it's become really popular. People have caught on to it as, you know, anything that works in the world of SDRs and sales. So why does it work though? Why has this been a successful play and continues to be a successful play? Is because it's human nature, basically. So we value connections as people. We trust what we know. So when you're approaching someone and you're approaching a prospect that's actually used your product before, and in some way it's helped to make their work life easier, then it's really that memory is what's going to turn that from a cold email to a warm outreach. So it's not surprising again that people are really catching on to this, using that trigger, but it also means that it's getting harder, right, to stand out in the inboxes. As you know, now when somebody changes the job, you're getting a ton of congratulations emails. So how is, you know, your congratulations email going to stand out to the reader? So, you know, I've seen it over the past year. Jen, I don't know, have you seen, you know, some job change outreach over the past year yourself?
Hell yes. So I changed jobs in January, and I myself, so I was, for those that don't know me, I was a seller for 18 years, like an individual contributor, not a sales leader. Like I was the one sending these emails. And I realized when I changed jobs, I had never seen the inbox of a buyer who had recently changed jobs. So when it was my inbox, my God, did I look at what I had sent to buyers that had just stepped into new role and realized I made all of the same mistakes. And when you have an inbox full, like, and I wish I would have taken a screenshot. And I don't even have like that cool of a title, right? I'm not some bigwig at like AT&T. But if you looked at my inbox, it was just congrats, 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 congrats. And then a few weeks later, we announced funding, and it was just congrats on the funding, congrats, congrats on the funding. And I wish that looking back, more companies would actually expose sellers to what those inboxes look like when they have executives turn inside their business. So when I was selling, the old advice was always, hey, hit them in the first 30 days because you got to get in early and before anybody else gets in and steals the money. And I think while that was certainly true, I will say, as someone who stepped into a role as a first-time buyer, right? I've never really been a buyer before. In a market like this, where, I mean, we all saw what happened last week with SVB, with all of the layoffs, all of these things are happening. I will tell you, the very last thing that most of us want to do in our first 30 days is start lighting money on fire, right? When there is as much market uncertainty as there is right now, it creates this behavior of risk aversion, where I'm going to make damn sure if I ask for money in my first 30 days, I don't look like I'm spending it irresponsibly. So I think there's a shift sort of right now that we're not seeing the same sort of first 30-day buying sprees that we probably saw back in like 2021. So when we look at how job outreach needs to change in response to that, there's a very simple formula that I think anyone can follow, which is just getting personal about something about their business. Like if your observation is, I saw you changed jobs, it is not commoditized. I promise you, it is what everybody is saying. And as a result, you just sound like everybody, and it means nothing. So take that one step further. We're going to do an exercise later, actually, where we rewrite some job change emails, but take that one step later and show that person, I'm not hitting the easy button. I'm looking at your business. I'm thinking critically about what you're trying to achieve. And I'm going to make an observation, not fully confident that I'm right. And I'm going to phrase it with a tonality that does not suggest I know everything when I've never worked in your business. But I want to demonstrate to that person, I'm not just reaching out to you because you're an easy target. I'm reaching out to you because there's a valid why now that has to do with something your business is trying to get done, and something I know from working with other companies and other executives that are trying to do that same thing, and trying to piece those puzzle pieces together. So that point of view, I will tell you the number of emails I got. I can't name one email I got that had a relevant point of view that didn't just fall back on congrats on your new job or congrats on funding. So just be very intentional. I think, just sum it up. When we're looking at job outreach change, don't fall back on the easy thing. Always hold ourselves accountable for being really problem-led as opposed to saw you got a new job. Do you want to spend money on this?
Yeah, couldn't agree more. Really, really great insights there, Jen. We've actually internally, we've been reworking our own sequences and playbooks for this trigger. Obviously, we drink our own Kool-Aid and, use our own products. So we love the job change trigger here. And we've had some really successful, well-working sequences, but because it's our own product, we've been maybe over automated and maybe a little bit lazy in the way that we've used it ourselves. So taking a more personal approach now, which has been our approach with everything else that we've done. So it was a bit silly that we weren't using it for this trigger as well. So now we're switching to, like you're saying, Jen, more, problem-centered, focus on them and not just relying on automated sequences running. So yeah, I love the insights and love to know like we're on the right track too here. But with the state of everything, especially now, that was kind of what prompted me to take a look at that again, just trying to squeeze out every single thing that we can. So that being said, let's switch gears maybe and talk about best practices, Lavender and UserGems. And I can kick it off, but Jen, please jump in at any point. I don't like to talk too much, so jump in with any insights or thoughts that you have. But first thing really when using this trigger is to just approach being a human, just humanize as much as possible. Our best practices, what we do and what we suggest, to using this trigger for our customers and how we do it internally is, that first outreach is really just reminding them about the relationship that we have already, since we're approaching people mostly who have some knowledge of us. So either we've worked with them or, they've been a customer, they've been a user, they've been connected to us in some way. So just first off, providing some value, offering up a gift as a congratulations is a great way to stand out too. And just not asking for anything up front. When that first email is just like, hey, saw you change jobs, congratulations, book a meeting. It doesn't really work anymore. So just coming in with thoughtfulness, mindfulness, and no ask. And then, for job changes, it is, I agree with Jen of like that mentality of like first 30 days, got to get them. We don't subscribe to that either and don't suggest it, but it is still important to reach out quickly the first time, but again, no ask, just reaching out as soon as possible, reminding, showing up in their inbox, being front of face, but then backing off for a while. So recommend, a couple weeks to a month before you start going in really hard and building that value and working up to an ask. Another thing to take note of is just not being reactive. When you see those changes happen on LinkedIn, not just immediately pounding them with a message on LinkedIn. As you can imagine, as we said already, they're getting bombarded. So, you're kind of wasting your time and their space in their inbox there. Yeah, but I'd say block one day each month. Make it a hot leads day so that nothing falls through the cracks, but you're not obsessing over those LinkedIn notifications. So just block off one day, go through, see who's changed jobs, and then, do your messaging on that day.
Love that. And then I think what we've put on the right side here is Sarah covered some incredible tips for specific to job change. but I've seen people do those and then fall down on the email. I myself have done it. Like, make no mistake, I have made every mistake in the book when it comes to emailing a contact turn. And I get it, right? We are so excited when we see someone land at a new company. It's like, oh, this is such a great opportunity to get a big meeting and I'm going to get it. And we put so much pressure on ourselves. And I mean, we all have different weaknesses, but I would go so far at like, here's a thesis statement around why you should take a meeting with us. And someone who's in their first 30 days just does not have time, energy, will, any of it to want to read my thesis statement. It could be an amazing thesis statement, but it's the wrong approach. And so what I've put together on the right-hand side is just really simple things that we've seen as Lavender analyzes millions of sales emails that actually help or hurt your chances of a reply. So the first thing is subject lines. Now, this is a terminology that Will Allred, who's our founder, uses all the time, which I love, which is this language of internal camo. Internal camo flies against everything that I learned as a seller, which is like, hey, you got to come up with some like really clever, flashy subject line. But we as humans, now when we're processing our inbox, we recognize that as a sales email, right? So if someone's like, 15 times your ROI, and like, I'm trying to be really cute in my subject, more often than not, I might just delete it without even reading it. So internal camo means think about the emails you get from your boss and your peers. It's like your CRM compliance, your expense report is overdue. Like, they're not flashy, sexy titles. And so one of the ways to increase the likelihood of that open is to be boring. And our data suggests between 3 and 5 words is actually the sweet spot, 3 if you can do it. Second thing is simplicity. I loved, yes, Trinity, don't write like a marketer from a marketer. So simplicity is a thing that I recognized I was getting really wrong in my emails. I was trying to impress prospects by using big fancy words and buzzwords and trying to show how academic I was. But it, again, neglects the fact that someone in their first 30 days is so tremendously busy. They don't have time to get a thesaurus to read your email, and nobody's impressed, right? I made this mistake all the time. So when you write at a 3rd to 5th grade reading level, you actually get 68% more replies. It's one of the easiest fixes we can make to our emails that is within our complete control. Tone, this is another one. This is like just basically a checklist of all the stuff Jen's done wrong in her contact turn emails. Tone, one of the things I realized is I was doing a lot of, we call it informative tones, but that's where you're telling someone. So imagine like, hey, I noticed you just started as head of sales at Acme Company. You're facing a ton of pressure to grow your enterprise accounts. Like, who are you? I don't know you. You've never worked in my company. Why are you talking at me, right? And so when I would go back and look at my emails, I would recognize I was doing it because I thought it sounded authoritative, but in reality, unsure tonality plays a lot better. An example of unsure tonality would be something like, I don't work in your organization, but I was thinking that maybe this is affecting your business, right? And by just changing that overall tonality, it is so much less off-putting to that buyer, because one of the things I think we don't do intentionally, but often we come across as naive by oversimplifying big problems and suggesting like our solution is the answer to save the day. So that tonality matters a lot. Brevity is an easy one, right? Keep it under 50 words. Will has the saying, if you can't tweet, delete. It is so hard to do this, but every time I bring an email down from my average of like 250 words down to 50, I realize I'm much clearer. I'm much more simple. It's much easier to understand, what am I asking? What am I trying to convey? So keep it under 50. And then the ask, another surprise to me. Your only goal here is to get a reply. It's not to get a meeting. Change the mindset. I don't know if I ask for the meeting for someone in their first 30 days, they're probably still going through onboarding. They're probably trying to figure out, like, if they were me, how the heck do you use Slack? Like, how do you use Gmail? I got a lot of other things, like adding meetings to my calendar and an already full calendar is not a priority. So start the conversation rather than seek to get the meeting. 0 to 1 questions actually increases reply rates. I would look back on emails and I'd be asking like 4 or 5 questions in my emails. It's just a lot of work, again, for that reader. And then lastly, personalize. I talked about this before. Personalize is not like, yo, Sarah, I saw you went to Penn State, like, love the Nittany Lions. That is not it. It used to be it. It used to be enough. It ain't it anymore. Personalization is showing I've done my work to come up with some sort of context around why you, why now. And I put that template sort of formula here, observation plus an insight around a problem that they are likely facing. So just some things that, like, for contact turn emails, for any sales emails we write, but especially for contact turn, because as Sarah mentioned, the bar is just higher. And we need to be really, really mindful that that person is probably a bit underwater in their first 30 days. Speaking from experience.
Definitely. Definitely, it's true. I think we've all experienced that, no matter the role, no matter the company, that
Yes.
first 30 days. Yeah, so just some pro tips for managers, or to bring to your managers, some things that are hopefully helpful here. So just make it as easy for your team, and I think the team members here will agree here. Make it as easy for them as possible to identify these changes and act on them quickly, by giving them the correct tech stack, the tools that allow them to find things like email addresses and phone numbers and identify these changes. Also, you got to keep your CRM updated. Nothing's any good with a gunky CRM. I think everyone's felt that pain before. So keeping it updated will really allow you to know, who your champions are, who's really worth pursuing, who's worth spending the time on. And then some type of alert is really important. So your team actually finds out that this is happening, that they need to act on this trigger in the place that they live. So whether that's email, Slack, Salesforce, wherever it is that they're doing most of their workflow out of, that's where they should be receiving a notification of, hey, you should be reaching out to this person. Save them time so that they can spend the time on that personalization that Jen was just talking about. So tools like Outreach, SalesLoft, Lavender, all really important for running this play. And then, it wouldn't be a webinar without a shameless plug, of course. So all the above things, all the pro tips, UserGems, that's why we are a company. That is what UserGems does, really helping to automate all of the hard stuff, all of the stuff that managers and SDRs really get stuck on, or just miss the entire trigger, the entire thing, because they're spending time elsewhere. So UserGems identifies the people that are worth tracking for you, tracks them for the job changes, and then it creates the new lead in your CRM automatically and alerts the owner, giving them the new email address, phone number, all of that. And then the best part is we just released this feature just to make everyone's life even easier, where we'll create the sequence for you within Outreach or SalesLoft, whatever you use, and it adds the leads in. So automatically triggering that off for your SDRs or AEs, whoever's appropriate there. So you can spend more time, again, on the personalization and in Lavender editing things. But now we want to kind of put this in practice and do some email punch ups. So we have some examples of emails we've received, and going to go through them and show, what we like, what we might want to change. Jen's got a good one to start us out here. Take it away.
Okay. And we are not here to shame people. Let's make that super, super clear. I could put all of my emails I sent to new contacts probably on the screen and embarrass myself, but of course it's easier to pick someone else's. So we're going to do that. So I'm going to share my screen. And first we're going to look at, I'm going to do something really dangerous. I'm going to pull up my actual inbox. So nobody judge me, please. First, we're going to look at the email I got here. Let's do it this way. So obviously we cut out everybody's name and everything. Can everybody see this? I'm assuming yes, someone would scream if they can't. So this is an email I got just recently, a couple of weeks ago. And to be clear, it is not the worst email I've ever received. Okay. Like there's a lot of things that I'm like, hey, that's not so bad about it. But this is an example of an email that could have been so much more powerful, and it just is totally fixable. So if you look at this email, thinking about the sort of 6 areas we just discussed, one, it's a little bit of a baby novel, right? Like, I don't know this person, never heard of this person before, but there's a lot in here. Now, the spacing is pretty decent. I actually think their tone is cool. Like, it looks to me as someone who looked at our company and said, all right, they're not super stiff and serious. And so things like, you've got a pretty sweet audience. I'm like, that's actually kind of appropriate for my persona, right? So it's not a terrible email, but if I put it into Lavender, and sorry, I'm going to move things around here. Lavender gives it an 80. Now, most of us would say, hey, 80, I can take that and put that on my refrigerator. My mom will be proud. But 80 is actually terrible in Lavender land. It means you're more than likely not going to get a reply. So here's all the issues with it. We're not going to go through this all today, but basically this is saying like, hey, it's way too long to be read on mobile, which is where most emails are read. The length of it itself is just crazy long. Your subject, you've got tons of long sentences. You ask too many questions. The reading level is a 9th grade reading level. So there's a lot of issues with that. I'm not going to continue to beat it up. What we are going to do is I'm going to show you how I rewrote it. And I intentionally kept some errors in here so you can see that I am not a perfect email writer, nor am I claiming to be. That's why I use it. So basically what this person is trying to do is set up a meeting so they can sell me on sponsoring a newsletter. A lot of people are in my inbox for this, right? So it's a really noisy space. What they do up front is what a lot of us make the mistakes of doing. We hear, hey, I'm supposed to make it relevant to their business. So we copy and paste some stiff ass thing that we cut off someone's website that does not sound like anything a human being would say, right? Like, imagine this person comes up to me at a party, again, no hate, but imagine they go, okay, so today I was reading up on Lavender and I was so impressed by how they've integrated their AI coach into existing workflows and how it can help teams boost their performance by up to 3 times. It's amazing the impact they're having in the sales world. We would never say that at a party. We would never, ever say that at a party. Emails are no different. Sometimes just by reading our emails out loud, we realize, wow, I'm not talking like a human being. So that opener, I give them credit. I know what they're trying to do, but it's not landing because it's way too stiff. And it's just checking the box. Like, look, I did my homework. It's not relevant. Then it's like, after your compliment, here is like your offer to sell me something. There's no connective tissue between these two things. Just because you compliment me doesn't mean that I'm going to want to go and throw money at promoting your newsletter, right? And yes, your newsletter sounds sick. You've got 25,000 marketers on it. Awesome. But then it's just all about them, right? Even if we go through our emails and just count how many times we say we, I, us, we're, we've got, it's a great signal that, hey, we got to shut this down and start over, because I'm just walking up to someone at a party and bragging about how many sit-ups I can do. Like, that's the analogy that I use in my head. And then the other thing is, like, we as salespeople don't have to be so apologetic. You're assuming that you're bugging me. I actually wasn't that bugged by this email, but when you say it like that, it makes me feel like you are ashamed of your outreach. If you're ashamed of your outreach, why are you hitting send on it? Right? And then just reply no, and I won't ever email you again. We don't have to be this apologetic about doing our jobs. So now that I've absolutely butchered this, and again, it's definitely not the worst email I received. It's far better than most I get. Here's what I propose as an alternative. So if you go and look at our company, right? One of the very first things you're going to see is our social presence. Now, not every company has this, and I am aware of that, but I'm using our own company as examples so I can get away with this. When I Google Lavender, I'm going to see a bunch of our social content. And if I just go to LinkedIn and I pull up Lavender's company account, I will see that this morning there was a post with our, kind of main character, Lavender Joe, where he is making the mistake a lot of us make when we send sales emails to companies who got recent funding, which is starting that email by saying recent funding. So I am making an observation up front that is complimentary, And the tonality is easy. It's not salesy, it's not pitchy, right? So today's Lavender Joe email refunding had funny emails had me cracking up. But this is the relevance tie that the other one was missing. It got me thinking. Marketing's often the one responsible for creating those icky email templates for SDRs. Our newsletter reaches 25,000 marketers every week. Every week we're seeing questions re how marketers should be using AI today. Worth discussing whether Lavender's content would help. To personalize an email but fail to nail the relevance is a miss, right? Because it's now a pattern that buyers recognize. Just because you state something that you saw in a report, but if it doesn't have anything to do with the body of the message, it doesn't matter, and we can see that from a mile away. It is okay if my response to this is like, hey, we're actually not targeting marketers, right? Because that would tell me as a seller, this is probably a bad fit prospect. But when I look at the other email and I look at this, none of this is inside information that like only I would know because I work here. It's stuff anyone can find if you look at the company that you're emailing. But it's telling someone a why them, why now. And even though it says our newsletter reaches 25,000 marketers each week, it's saying that to establish how they're able to tell them this second sentence, right? So it's not bragging for the sake of bragging. It's stating a fact to give context to the next sentence. But this is how we know that there are a lot of questions around how marketers should be using AI today. And so what I'm trying to do here is one, cut way down on the word count. But even here, if you see this purple line, this sentence I wrote is way too complex and I shouldn't have written it. Instead, I could take one of the suggestions and say, marketing, oops, can't type, usually creates those icky email templates for SDRs, right? So it is hard to write outreach, but this is tracking and helping me understand what am I actually screwing up that I probably know better, but as I'm in the thick of it, I'm forgetting it. So last thing I'll make a comment on is subject line. This isn't the coolest subject line in the world, but I'm trying to go for that internal camo, right? Lavender Joe video. If I see an email, and there's not a lot of people on this phone call, but if I see an email that says Lavender Joe video, I'm going to open it, right? Because it shows that someone is taking the time to look at what we're doing in a way that's relevant to me. And so it doesn't have to be super clever. It doesn't have to tell me how many ROI, returns you're going to get. Just be simple, be boring, be internal camo. So it's still like, it's not 100 email, but our goal is to get it to a 90. So this is just one example. And it doesn't mean that this is the perfect email by any chance, but it just goes to show how much effort it takes to read an email like this versus how much effort it takes to read an email like this. And this is something, again, someone could easily say yes or no, this is not up my alley. So I will stop there. And Sarah, you got a better scoring email than I did. So why don't you show us how it's done?
No, I love that. I love that write up. And it is hard. Like we can't understate how hard it is to sit and write and rewrite emails. Like in Lavender, if you use Lavender, you will be sitting and rewriting. We were just talking before starting about how, you've got to get the blue, you've got to get the A, you've got to, when you're using Lavender, you've got to get it there. It really is helpful. So Amber, would you share the screen? Thank you. Awesome. So yeah, I've got a really interesting example here today, because this is actually, we call it being UserGemmed here. So this was when I moved to UserGems and I did receive a congrats email. So the exact situation that we're talking about today. And there are I thought this email, they did get me with the subject line, although I'd probably tweak the subject line a little bit myself, but they did get me with that. I knew it was for me specifically. And I like the length of the email. I even like the little emoji. I'm a sucker for emojis. So, but the length of the email, I definitely read it. It wasn't, too long. I didn't open it and go, oh my gosh, and there, the fact that they had paid attention, that they saw that I'd moved, that caught my attention, but then they kind of lost me with the immediate to the pitch, and just the pitch itself, you know, that I'm going to impress the team and referencing the marketing economy. It's just missing any real personalization. This to me just said like, okay, they saw I changed the job, they got a notification on LinkedIn or something, and they use that, but it's really beyond that. It doesn't speak to me. So again, starting with the subject line, Lavender has taught me shorter is better. And I think too, just using the name in there. If you're going congratulations or congrats, keeping it with the name, you know, congrats, Sarah, or congratulations, Sarah, something along those lines, would definitely catch my attention. And then taking this first sentence, hope everything is going well with your switch to UserGems, want to offer my congratulations. Just again, keeping things simple, like simple, straightforward. I just say, you know, congratulations on the new role. You know, keep it simple. I like the name at the end of a sentence personally as a pattern interrupt. We're all used to seeing it at the top of the screen. So end of the sentence makes it a little stand out a little bit more to me, at least. From there, I really, again, best practices, going back to that, I wouldn't be immediately going in with a pitch. If this was somebody I knew in this situation, I can tell you, I know this is a product I used before moving to UserGems and that UserGems didn't have. So I would go in from that approach and just say, you know, going to miss working with you. I also can't type today, Jen. At, you know, whatever the company I was at before, you know, and say something positive along the lines of, but, you know, now you're bringing great things to UserGems. And then, like we talked about, something a little bit more personal, just something for me to know that they did 2 seconds of research even would stand out. So I'm thinking like, you know, it doesn't even have to be me specific. It can be about the company. Like I just choose to make a big move, moving jobs from one company to the other. So I think highlighting the company in this situation is a great thing to do. So I could say like, you know, looks like a great org to be joining now. Their rep view scores are unreal. Not scare scores. So again, just a hint of personalization in the first email, because this is the one where you're just really wanting to remind them. She should just really be reminding me at this point that we have a relationship already, you know, and then from there I can take it. And then just, we always love to send a gift in the first email, whether that's just a tiny coffee gift card or whatever, just send a little gift, send in your way, and just as a little congrats from whatever company she's from. And that's it. That is all I would send as a first touch. Somebody just got a new job, have a relationship there already, you know, and then give it a couple weeks, then come in with your value in talking, you know, about their problem. But that is where I would leave it. We get any questions in the chat here while I was typing? Oh, I see some. Looks like if customer success works with customers and AEs are not hands-on after closing a deal, would you still say going to miss you with gonna miss you at X company? Or are you only doing this for prospects you personally worked with? These are not hands-on. I would say, it probably depends on what you're selling in this situation for this question. If it's a user situation, if it's somebody who would have been this scenario, this email example that I showed, I was a user of that product. So in that situation, I would say that. If it was somebody who maybe didn't have anything to do with your product, even though they had it at a past company, then I might leave it out. Might take a different approach there. Let's see here. Can we see it from another point of view? Say your buyer has left, what kind of response do you send? Oh, sorry, send to the new buyer. So your buyer's left. Oh, so you're talking about like an open op situation. Yeah. So in an open op situation, it's still come in with the congrats and say, saying like, oh, something about recognizing the situation. Also, in the way we approach in our first email, there's always prompts for personalization. So if it is an open op situation, always taking a moment to look at that op, look where they were at, look how involved they were in the buying process and personalize from there. But the approach would be a little bit different there. But you could talk about the reason their problem brought them into an opportunity with you in the first place. And then going into, do they see the same gap, or are they struggling with the same thing at the company they've landed at?
One thing I would add, so when I started my career in account management, and I spent 7 of my years in sales at that. And one thing I think we often neglect to realize is that person in their first 30 days, that new contact, they are learning. We have information that can help them learn. If we set aside our desire to like have them be our main contact and sponsor our renewal and all of that stuff, we actually can really add to their learning journey. And I would always use that as my intro. Like, imagine the first 30 days, like you're spending a lot of time meeting the team, understanding current state. I have some observations from our, 1 year or 2 years of working with you, specifically, boom, boom. If worth of a chat, would be glad to have it, right? And just show that you have something to add. We don't always have to take as salespeople. Brain, rebranded Brain, has a question that I'm glad you asked. Thoughts on using PS? PS is like an undercover reply rate increaser. It's like 28% more replies or something when you use PS. Now, worth noting, you can't get away with it on mass emails. If you use PS on a mass email, like a cadence, you send the same one to everybody, it has no impact. If you use it on a personalized email, it has a 28% more likelihood that you get a reply. So definitely use that PS before everybody jumps on that train and it becomes just another thing that we've built.
Also love a PS. I'm with you.
So D asked, what if you know nothing about them? I'm assuming the prospect.
Where are you seeing this?
In the chat.
You know nothing about them. So again, in the job change scenario, I would go to the company then and look at the company. If there's something you can point out that stands out to you, that you think would stand out to them in their role, something you can connect with there. It can be tricky when people are not active on LinkedIn, right? When you can't really get to know their personality without knowing them. But there are other places you can turn to. If you can get to know the company and get to know their persona, then you can go from there.
Yeah. There's definitely like, I have the luxury of selling to sales and marketing people, and they just put their whole lives on LinkedIn, but I do empathize with people that are selling to either really small companies or, different types of roles that just aren't as active with putting it out there for the world to see. So I think that, Sarah, to your point, I think that's where we need to take what we know from clients that we're currently working with and form a hypothesis, but be so careful, as we talked about before, the tonality. to position it as a hypothesis and not a fact, right?
Yeah.
Like there's a lot of just different beliefs around phrases like, VPs of marketing like you. I personally hate it because I think as humans we seek to be understood as unique and different. And when someone's like, if someone came to me and said, VPs of community like you, my initial reaction is like, I'm not like every other VP, right? So I think be careful with how we phrase it, but just to say like, hey, I was super curious about what you're doing at UserGems. I don't know that this is where you're spending your time, but a lot of people at this point are looking at X, Y, and Z. And here's something interesting that we did that helps you think through that, and just help them understand the problem you want them to believe that they have by aiding them with information. That would be how I would approach that situation. And it is really tricky and tough.
Yeah. I'm with you there, Jen. It's also cringy for me, that language. I don't know why, but every time I see it too, I'm like, no, it feels dishonest or something.
Yeah. Okay, we got more questions. Dan, what's your take on reaching out to somebody you worked with versus a target exec who just changed the role without previous history with you? Any rules of thumb? What do you think, Sarah? This is totally your wheelhouse.
Yeah, I mean, it's a different approach, right? Because you can't lean on that relationship that you have already. But I would say the overall approach can be the same. Again, going in with a congrats, not going in immediately asking for something, but a congrats. Maybe in this situation, you might want to start like building that value from the first email. So giving them a bit of education. Again, the approach Jen's been talking about, problem, trying to find their problem, relate to, and putting something out there for a response, not for a meeting.
Yeah, I like that. And I think one of the things, like I almost look at this as the same thing, Dan, with outbound versus inbound. Like it is so easy for us as salespeople to get lazy on inbound because like, they already want it. Like, what time do you want to speak? I think it's always good to treat the situation like there's someone you haven't worked with, because I think it sends a signal value. If you like, anybody can take the easy path. Oh, you bought it here. I'm going to just schedule time on your calendar. You're going to buy it here. I think it neglects that like first 30, 60, 90 days of people having to establish their new brand in their company, figure out how things work. So I personally believe we should always treat people with the same way we would have if we were outbounding them, whether or not we know them.
Yeah.
I think same rules apply.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, Trinity put into the chat a link to one of our playbooks. We do have several playbooks there that are all around the job change scenario. So it's a good starting point. Again, we always push for personalization. Don't take them as copy paste, but they are really, really good starting place that just follow most of our best practices there.
I wish UserGems was around when I was trying to sell. Let me just say that, because I'm like, this was always the place where you would find your customers as former customers, and you always find out too late. So not to like, gas you up too much.
That's exactly why I came to work here, because I knew I had been doing it painfully manually myself because it was worth it to do. So when I saw this, I was like, oh, gold. Okay. I totally understand that.
Love it. Awesome. I think that's all the questions I saw in the...
And yeah, you'll see in the chat, anyone who's still with us, Amber will be putting in links if you're interested in learning more about Lavender, which I definitely suggest you do if you're not using Lavender already, and UserGems as well. So check it out. Thank you to everyone for attending, hanging out with us, and throwing the questions out. This has been fun.
Yeah, thank you everybody for joining us, and let us know if you write a great email, send it to us. We want to see it.
Yes.
Love it.
Awesome. Only 99s.
Girl, this is for all the people that haven't jumped off yet. I've never scored 100. So if someone has 100 scoring email. You got to send it to me and Sarah.
I can't believe you've gotten a 99. I haven't gotten one yet. Now I'm feeling really behind. Like now that's what I'm doing right after we get off of this, is just going and trying to get a 99.
I don't even know if Will has scored a 100. I might be putting him on blast. I know Will Aiken got 100 the other day, our social guy, but
So it is possible. It's not
it's
just
possible.
rigged. So you keep, trying to attain.
the drug strategy. Yeah. Like that 100, I'm never sleeping. So yeah. Too good. Well, thank you, everybody. Thank you, Sarah.
Yes. Thank you, Jen. This has been great.
Awesome.
Well, thank you both very much. Thank you, everyone. Bye, guys.
Bye.